2024. Madam Secretary, can you please call the roll?
Thank you. Good morning again, everyone. I'm going to start with Director Conroy, who's absent. Garbarino. Present. Roscoe.
Present.
Hill.
Here.
Farr.
Present.
Beer.
Here.
Vice Chair Moulton Peters is absent. Chair Hernandez.
Here.
President Cochrane.
Here.
Thank you. You are committee of the whole still. The quorum and a committee of the whole. Also in the room, we have directors Giudice, Maston, Rabbit, Rodoni, and Tayo.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the agenda, we have, we'll start with item number 3, which is authorized salary adjustment to select positions in response to salary survey findings. And we have Kelly Hopper to help us through that item. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. We're bringing an item to you today to address adjustments to salaries for 6 classifications. Our Director of Budget and Electronic Revenue, our Chief Technology Director, our Manager of Electronic Revenue Collection, our Purchasing Officer classification, our Contract Officer, and finally our ADA Compliance and Program Manager. And we're asking that these adjustments to the salary be effective retroactive to March, the first pay period in March. As this committee knows, I've been coming forward for the last several months on our recent compensation survey that we had, and the board has given some great direction and discussion, and staff is trying to come back in response to that. And we heard loud and clear that the board desires a compensation policy for the organization, and we will be bringing that forward in the coming month or two for you all to consider. But there was also a very strong desire by this board to address the positions that were most out of market competitiveness, and that was deemed 15% or more out of market competitiveness. And those are the items that we're bringing forward to you today. Those are the positions. What we did is we went back and we looked at the positions and said what would be the appropriate range that would bring them within a 5% of the median of the market, which is kind of what industry standards are. If you're within 5%, that is considered competitive in the market. So we looked and we said, okay, what are the classifications that we could put them in that would be closest to the 5%? And that's where we made this recommendation today and the salary adjustments. One thing I do want to note, and this was unique, it kind of popped up as we were doing our follow-up review here in the last month or so, is our contracts officer position. So in the report, the data for contracts officer showed that it was within market competitiveness. However, in discussion with Joe Wire and his staff, the way that the district uses our procurement or our purchasing officer and our contract officer are very similar. They have similar management responsibilities, similar types of work and units. And so we went back to the consultants and said, why is there this anomaly? And the consultant was actually able to confirm that certain agencies may use these roles in a different way, and that it appeared that it was justifiable in this situation, that the way the district does business is that these positions continue to be aligned at the same. So as a result, we are recommending adjustment to that position as well, so we can keep those 2 classifications aligned. And then finally, there was one additional position in the report that we need to do a little bit more, a little deeper dive look, and it's somewhat similar to the contracts position, but it's our operations control manager. And we need to go back and look as of the way the duties it has with some of the other positions there in our bus division, and that our operations control center may be different than some of the other larger ones from BART, SFMTA, things like that. So we need to do a little bit deeper dive. However, we are confident that when we bring the compensation policy to the board, and if the board ultimately approves it, this position will also be addressed at that time. Finally, just so as note, the full impact is a little over $200,000, $160,000 of it in salaries approximately, and then an approximately another $48,000 in fringes and payroll benefits. And that concludes my report, Director Hernandez.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments, any discussion? Yes, Director Maston, please.
I assume that market is defined differently for some of our positions, like management would not necessarily be the same market as other workers. In this case, how is market defined? Nationally, locally, regionally?
So this board has taken a position of defining the methodology, and the methodology is looking at regional Bay Area agencies that tend to be doing the same kinds of work, transit systems, public agencies. Like for instance, most transit systems don't have engineering arm. So this board approved East Bay Mud and some of the other ones. So you've defined that methodology. It's about approximately 8. Now I will note that there, for instance, ferries, there are very few ferry competitors here. So we actually have to go out and look on a national level and then try to factor in cost of living so these dollars are the same, because in some of these markets their wages are significantly lower. So we're trying to make it as close as we can. For a lot of our trades, we also include the master agreements or some sort of state agreements that we have to try to make it as close as we can.
So we define the market as, for all positions, as being regional or local?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Steer?
My question was similar, so I think you answered it, but the follow-up question I do have is, so we're comparing our compensation only to public agencies, or are there any private agencies?
Public only.
Okay, thank you.
So, Dr. Grossman?
I was just going to move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, shall we have some public comment opportunities?
We have no speakers on this item.
Are there speakers outside of the room?
No.
Oh,
No,
okay.
no speakers on the phone or in the room.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Committee discussion then is concluded. Public comment, there is none. The item's been moved and seconded. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank Kelly for her diligent work to stay on top and continue to bring us items so that we can be where we need to be in terms of our compensation for our valued employees. Thank you. So let's have a voice vote, please. All those in favor of supporting the recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
If there's anyone opposed to supporting this recommendation, please say no. Seeing no no's, this item passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 4, which is approve implementation of the 4-year Equal Employment Opportunity Program Affirmative Action Plan for 2023 to 2027. It's on in your report on pages 7 to 32, and I'd like to. There she is. Good morning, Susan Spencer. Thank you so much for taking us through this item.
Good morning, board members. I'm happy to be here. I'm Susan Spencer. I'm the Director of EEO and Workforce Inclusion for the district. And today I'm going to review our EEO program with you and ask for your approval. This includes an update. I have a lot of information for you today. So I have my notes that I'm going to follow, so I won't be looking at you directly. But as a reminder, that FTA grantees are required to have an EEO program that ensures non-discrimination in the workplace regarding employment decisions for applicants and employees. I'm going to share 7 elements of the program with you. I'm going to review some workforce data and our progress in meeting our goals. I'm going to discuss what we're doing to support this program. The board last approved the EEO program in 2019. And this program I'm presenting to you today is due April 30th. So this is a 4-year program. It looks backward at data, and then it plans forward for effective management and oversight. So the first element is the general manager's EEO statement. That's what we have here in front of you. This is attached to the board item as well. This sets forth the district's commitment to equal access to employment, fair treatment, and non-discrimination in our employment decisions. The protected statuses are listed there, so you can see everyone is in one or more of the protected categories. The second element is our plan for dissemination of that statement. So we do this internally to our employees by posting the statement on our intranet and on our internal bulletin boards. It's given to our new hires at orientation. It's also in our HR guide. I brief top management on our EEO policies at various meetings and trainings. It's also discussed in the new hire training. I provide management additional guidance on EEO policies and discuss specific goals. And the general manager annual memos are also setting policy for harassment and prevention and work rules to reinforce our EEO commitments. And we also ask unions for assistance with meeting our goals as appropriate. And then we do this externally by stating our EEO commitment in our job announcements. Our outreach includes regularly posting with sources such as minority groups, trade unions, women in the trades, transit associations, local and state governmental agencies, colleges, community-based organizations, and veteran organizations. And we also partner with CircleWorks to post to over 200 community-based organizations. Our job announcements are going out to a wide variety of diverse audiences. And then we participate in job fairs where the EEO policy statement is available. We advertise our EEO policy through online advertising, and we include non-discrimination language in our contracts. And the third element is to designate the personnel responsible for this plan. So you as the board are responsible to review the plan and approve it every 4 years. Dennis, as the general manager, issues the EEO policy statement that complies with federal laws and FTA requirements. And he has overall responsibility through a designated EEO officer, which is me. And he also ensures that I have the authority and support to successfully carry out the EEO program. And as the EEO officer, I'm responsible for management and oversight to implement policies and programs to support EEO goals, to be independent and impartial. So this basically means not to have any conflicts with HR and to have direct access to the general manager for any EEO concerns that I have. And I'm also required to have expertise in how discrimination occurs, to have knowledge of laws, and have authority to work with leaders to achieve the goals. And then our HR managers also have a role. So they have to ensure that our hiring processes are fair. They advise applicants and employees about positions. They train managers on interviewing and recruitment, and they work with me on fair employment practices. Directors, managers, and supervisors also have a responsibility to not discriminate in their employment decisions, to participate in EEO discussions, to encourage their own employee development and growth, to promote safe and respectful work environment free from discrimination, harassment, and retaliation, and also to respond timely and appropriately to any known harassment or discrimination. And then our employees have a role to understand and adhere to the district's EEO and policies and conduct themselves in a professional and responsible and non-discriminatory manner. And they also have a responsibility to cooperate fully during any complaint investigation. So the fourth element is the workforce utilization analysis. So here we conduct an analysis of current workforce's gender and race makeup to determine if it's representative of the availability of the larger labor force. We use the 2020 census, local and regional employment areas for that data, and we compare current workforce incumbency to what the census tells us is available in our labor force, which is called the availability. We use Biddle Consulting to assist with action planning and compliance support for this data. And in doing this analysis, we can then identify job categories where underutilization exists for women and minorities in relation to their availability. So this allows us to establish then our hiring goals that are aimed at eliminating underutilization, which I'm going to share with you as part of this presentation. And it's important to know as I go along that the plan includes all regular full-time employees. It does not include part-time, temporary, or casual employees. The snapshot date for this is June 30th, 2023. And we had, at that point, we had 660 regular full-time employees. The snapshot date is driven by the FTA. So this slide, you can see the current workforce utilization by gender. So the male percentage is 79.4. This is down 1% from the last plan. And female percentage at 20.6 is then up 1%. I ran a report April 2nd, 2024, just because I was curious to see if that number had changed at all, and the percentages are exactly the same right now. So next we look at, oh, I'm sorry. Next we look at race. So here you can see that minorities are 57% of the population. That's an increase of 2% from 2019. And non-minorities represent 43% of the population, so that's down 2%. And the highest employee representation among minorities are Hispanic employees at 18.5%. That is the fastest increasing race for the districts. That's gone up 1.5%. And then next is African American at 18%, which is down 1.5%. And Asian at 17% is up 1%. Then American Indian or Alaskan Native at 1% is the same as the last plan. And Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander is 0.5%, which is also the same as the last plan. And then finally, the 2 or more races category is up 1% to 2%. And so where we're seeing this is really with our new hires. We have a lot of new employees who will check the box 2 or more races. And the next is by job group. So on this chart, you can see the distribution of our 7 job categories. These are defined by federal regulations. Those are on the right. And the job titles align with each group. So you can see which positions are associated with each job category. The 2019 plan includes 736 employees. This one, as I mentioned, is 660 employees. Service is the largest area. So it's about 42%. 4 years ago, we had 361 employees in this group. Today we have 275. This is our bus operator group, deckhands. That's our large group. And then our skilled workers, we have about 20% of the workforce. The protective services, those are our lieutenants, sergeants, and patrol officers, are about 5%. Our executive remains about 5% workforce. Professional, 7%. Technician, 5%, and clerical is 6%, which is the same. So with all of this information, we compare availability to our labor markets, and we can see where hiring and promotional goals are established for the next 4 years. So on this slide, you can see the previous goals from the previous plan on the top, and then underneath it are the new goals. So you can see that we have met our minority goal in executives, but that we have a new goal for 2 females. Professionals, we have a new goal for 3 minorities. Technicians, we have no goals. Clerical, no goals. Protective services, we have a goal for 1 female. The previous plan was 5, so that's a good number. Skilled craft, we've met that goal, so that's also good to see, but we have now a new goal of 5 minorities. And then for service workers, we have a new goal of 33 females, down from 49, which is also good. So I want to remind you that these are targets, and we make good faith efforts to meet our goals, but they're not rigid goals. This is really what the analysis tells us that we need to be taking affirmative action towards over the next 4 years. And so things that we can do are things like focusing our outreach, ensuring the hiring process is fair, and that hiring decisions are not discriminatory. We can train incumbent employees and conduct succession planning to allow for promotions. We can use creative sourcing. We can work with unions, schools, apprenticeships, things like that to reach underutilized groups. And I also conduct an annual progress report and can share that with you as well annually. So the next slide is another way to look at our goals to explain availability versus utilization. So here, if you'll look at, for example, job category A at the bottom, which is the largest group and includes the bus operators, we have a female incumbency rate of 10.9% and an availability rate of 22.9%. So our goal is to get closer to that 22.9%. So in order to do that, it's telling us that we need to hire 33 females. So that's how this chart works. I'm not going to go over everything in this chart. I'm going to move on. So next, we assess employment practices to determine what, if any, impact our policies are having on women and minority groups, and what specific programs we can develop that might eliminate barriers and help us achieve our hiring and promotional goals. So these are the employment practices that we look at. So I'm going to go through each one of these for you. For recruitment, I work with HR to ensure developing and promoting fair recruitment processes. So for example, the job descriptions need to reflect the knowledge and skills and abilities that they should reflect. We should be doing proper outreach. The job application process needs to be accessible. New positions need to be reviewed. The physical abilities listed in those positions should be accurate. The interview process fair and adverse impact are done to ensure no disparate impact in our hiring decisions is happening. And then with regard to compensation and benefits, we need to ensure fair pay and benefits by regularly conducting and reviewing salary surveys and taking action as necessary. The positions and salaries, I know, are listed on our website, so that helps with transparency in this process. And we also ensure that benefits are equally provided and accessed. So, for example, one benefit might be a leave of absence policy. So we would make sure that if somebody needed a medical leave, that would be something everybody had equal access to. We also ensure that seniority applied according to the contracts, and we follow the MOUs in the hiring and discipline process. And seniority is not lost during times of an absence. With regard to training, we ensure employees have equal access to career development through coursework, seminars, and in-house training, tuition reimbursement opportunities, and to learn on the job. With respect to testing, we ensure that all the testing that we do is validated and job appropriate, and that it does not result in any disparate impact to any one race or gender. With respect to discipline procedures, the general manager and the deputy general managers hire, evaluate, and discipline and discharge employees. The purpose here is to ensure the discipline is not adversely impacting any one gender or race, that it's progressive in nature, and that employees have an opportunity to improve performance and behaviors before separation. With respect to termination practices, this involves a review of terminations. So before termination, I will review the supporting documents and ensure that progressive discipline is taking place. And I'll review that with the general manager as well. When the termination is involuntary, employees have an opportunity to respond through the grievance process with their union representation. And if they're not represented, they have an opportunity to respond or ask for a hearing through our HR guide. There are a few violations that will result in immediate termination, such as unlawful discrimination or harassment, theft, fraud, workplace violence. Otherwise, discipline is progressive. And I have reviewed these practices and worked with managers and HRs, and when concerns arise, for example, if we have a testing that shows adverse impact, we'll lower the score. That's one way to ensure fair testing. And then if termination is not reasonably progressive, we will reduce the discipline. And if it's overly harsh or inconsistent, we will reduce the discipline. So for the report on personal actions, I'm going to share some data and charts with you. But first, I want you to take a look at where our employees reside, because this helps us to understand our outreach, where we should be outreaching, hiring from, and posting our positions. These are also the counties that we use for our local availability. So Sonoma County remains the largest employee population area at 25%. That's the same as last plan. Marin was down 3% in 2019, and now it's down another 2% in 2023. So this is a steady decline. San Francisco's also down 2%. Alameda's at 9%. Contra Costa is up 1% to 14%. Solano is up 15%. And San Mateo is the same. Other is up 3%, and that includes other counties such as Napa, Sacramento, Santa Clara, Placer, San Joaquin, and Riverside. And then we had 7 out-of-state employees on the snapshot date.
That's a whole.
So now we'll take a look at personnel actions. So starting with new hires, I'm providing data to report over the previous 4 years. So this is just a progress report from you, January 20 to December 2023. We had 182 new hires over this period. The last plan year for reference was 290. And we had hired in 2019, we hired 27% female rate. So we're seeing an increase here at 28% of females, which is good to see under our plan, given our current overall utilization is 20.6%. So this is helping us to meet our goals. So we can see that. And then I also want to point out that in 2015, we had a 55% minority rate. And in 2019, it was 62%. And now you can see it's 64%. So this is also a steady increase, which has helped us to meet our goals. And on the right, you can see which job group areas these new hires were hired into over the 4-year period. So looking at personnel actions, the promotions, our total promotions included 93 employees, again, over this 4-year progress work that I'm sharing. So we consider how these promotions then track with our incumbency rate. So you're looking at 80-20 for gender and 57% for minority. So females were promoted at 24% and males at a rate of 76%. Those are close to incumbency at 80-20, so that's a good numbers. Minorities were promoted at a rate of 55%, which is also close at 57%. So some promotions that you may want to know about are good stories to hear. We've had bus operators promote to customer relations assistant, to dispatch, and to transportation field supervisors. We had supervising administrative assistant promoted to a schedules assistant. We've had deckhands to vessel masters to director of ferry operations. We've had a mechanic to a ferry maintenance manager, servicer to a bus mechanic apprentice, paint laborer to house painter, lane worker to paint laborer, storekeeper to buyer, and then bridge patrol tends to go to bridge patrol, sergeant, and then sergeant to lieutenant. So we're seeing a good number of promotional opportunities for our employees, which is great, and this is something that the FTA also likes to see. So next we'll take a look at
Can I interrupt you just for a second? I have a question. Can you just say a few more words about the 80-20 ratio?
Yes, that's the percentage of employees that we have. So we have about 80% male gender employees currently and 20% female. And then we have 57% with the minority rate.
So with this graph that you just discussed, the 76-24, your point is that kind of close to 80-20 in terms of the promotions.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So if those numbers were off more than that, much more than that, then it would really tell a story that there's something happening that we need to look deeply at. It should match. It should closely match about that 80-20 or whatever your incumbency rate is for your gender and your minority rates. So for personnel actions, we had 252 separations from this 4-year look back period here. 202 were voluntary. The largest group were retirees, with 80 retirees. We had 110 employees resign. The reasons for resigning are personal reasons, people moved or got a new job. We had 7 job abandonments, and we had 5 deaths. And then on the 51 involuntary separations, So of those 51, 36 were male, so that's 71%, and 15 were female, that's 29%, and 35 were minority, that's 69%, and 16 were non-minority. So again, we're looking at the incumbency rate, and is what we look to measure a fair process. So again, that's the 80-20 and 57 that you asked about. So the female and minority looked a little higher than incumbency here. So I looked at the female involuntary separations and the circumstances around those. 11 of them were, 11 of the 15 were bus operators. We had a few operators not pass student training or probation. We had a medical separation, and we had 6 separated for performance or policy violations.
I'm going to stop you. There's a question. Director Hill, please.
Yeah, I had a little trouble getting my hands around this because going back to the personal actions 252 separations, we're mixing total employment and voluntary with male, female, minority. Can it be both? Or
Yes.
Okay, so this doesn't really add up to something. This just says that this is a proportion along with the other. I was going to say with the race. The other question is, I see a lot of my kids, friends, and family, and we are in San Francisco incredibly multiracial. You know, and it's very difficult to really do that thing. I think I'm maybe a little bit less in the north, but not much. But I have trouble putting my hands around it, you know, for that reason.
Yeah, and another interesting way the data works if the 2 or more races is considered minority. So when you're looking at that.
Multiracial is minority. Okay.
Yeah.
It's surprising it's so small. But that may be the younger generation.
That was a new category not that long ago. And so most of our employees who were already hired didn't have the option of selecting 2+ races. I did issue an opportunity for them to do that, but I didn't get much of a response. So where we're seeing that is new hires.
Yeah, that is more generational.
Yeah.
Younger people. Thank you.
And so I also looked at the minority terminations, and I ran an adverse impact report, and that report showed the impact to be less than 2 standard deviations, which is considered non-significant. And I confirmed that the non-minorities were terminated for the same very reasons as minorities. So overall, we had 11 who did not pass probation or training. We had 3 do a reduction in force. This was due to COVID. And we had 6 resign in lieu of termination. So usually that's a grievance or a settlement that's happened. We had 1 insubordination. We had 2 who lacked necessary documents. That's usually during the hiring or probationary process. We had 7 medical separations and 17 misconduct and policy violations, and then 4 for poor performance. So it's important here to know that progressive discipline is really the standard that we follow. So employees do have access to the grievance process. I do review all of the terminations with the managers to ensure that progressive discipline is being followed and that the discipline is appropriate. Dennis also approves the separations, and we've had situations where we have reduced discipline from separation to last chance agreements. And we made some adjustments on the attendance rules in the student bus operator training program that should help with students who are not passing student training. That's a higher number than we would like to see. So this next, I'm not sure why this isn't in order here. There we go. Discipline. Okay, so this slide shows discipline.
Before we continue, there's a question. Dr. Crosby.
I realize it really doesn't matter, but I'm curious if we know all these, the way you summarized the discipline, how we would compare to other Bay Area transit districts. Is there anything that compares those? Are we having more terminations than others, or for involuntary reasons, or about the same, or do we know?
I don't have that information, but I could probably ask my consultant for that kind of information. We'd have to find
agency.
It doesn't seem that bad, but I was just,
Yeah, I don't know.
Let's have the consultant look into that, please. Thank you.
So this slide does show the discipline. This is a snapshot, so this is a shorter period of time. It's 1 year. And this is mostly bus operators because they were our largest group. And then the other departments represented here were bridge protective services, skilled trades, bus service, and maintenance. There were no disciplines in any of the other departments during this snapshot period. But this is the snapshot that the FTA wants to see, just a 1 year period, which is why I'm sharing it with you. So you can see the gender and race rates reflected here. And what's important to know here too is that progressive discipline is progressive. So people would start out at a reprimand, move through verbal, written suspension, and eventually termination. So people on the numbers here, people could be here more than one time. So for example, I know there was one person who was represented in verbal 3 times. So looking deeper at these issues, I'll start with the bottom. So the last chance agreements, that's what LCA stands for. Both of those were drug program violations, so people who tested positive. And we have a program we allow for rehabilitation. So that's what that is. Many of the reprimands and verbals and writtens were for
Susan, I'm going to stop you
attendance.
for 1 second.
Sure.
There's a question by our president.
LCA,
Last chance agreement.
last chance agreement.
If someone tests positive for drugs and they're in the mandatory pool, we give them the opportunity to take time and we give them the opportunity to go to the program. As part of that, they sign an agreement. So if they test positive again, they're automatically terminated.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Please go ahead, Susan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. So the reprimands, verbals, and writtens were for attendance, unsafe operations of a bus, discourtesy, and passenger pass-ups. And then the suspensions were for discourtesy and cell phone use. And of the 8 terminations, 3 were job abandonments. 1 was an at-fault accident. 1 was a failure to report an accident. And 1 was for violating a last chance agreement. 1 was for an overall work record after progressive discipline. And 1 was actually rescinded after the snapshot date. So I also looked at rescinded discipline and found that 6 minorities had discipline rescinded versus 2 non-minorities in this same snapshot time frame. I want to stress with the discipline, it's really important to know the story behind why it's happening. And that's what I do with the managers when we are issuing discipline, because we do take it seriously and try to be very consistent in how it's being applied and fair to our employees. So the 7th element of the EO plan is what our plan is for monitoring and reporting. And this is regarding our performance to goals. So I collect and assess this data annually to determine what our performance to goals is. Each hire goes through an impact analysis, which involves reviewing goals with hiring managers. I look at hiring records, discipline, promotions, pay, and separation processes. I also report to the general manager and discuss progress with managers at leadership meetings and as part of the annual assessment, and notify managers of any problems in their areas during the recruitment process. I also ensure that we're in compliance with our EEO training. We have a harassment prevention training later this year, and we have been using a learning management system, some diversity training. And we also have access now to NeoGov's training, and they have a variety of EEO-related training there. And then I also offer dispute resolution services for employees who experience conflict. So this typically happens a few times a year. It involves a process of mediation and coming to agreements on changes necessary to support healthy work relationships. I'm also trained and conduct fair workplace investigations into allegations of harassment, discrimination, retaliation, and make recommendations for corrective action. And then I also ensure that we are providing workplace accommodations for employees with physical work restrictions, and that we engage in the interactive process with employees to determine whether or not we can accommodate them in their current or an available position. And the final piece is the action-oriented plans. So these are some of the things that we do as a result of having all of this information. These things can impact reaching our goals. So we have increased attendance at job fairs. We've improved our outreach by partnering with Circa Works, which I mentioned earlier. And we have internships and apprenticeship programs. We have a program for the bus operators with Santa Rosa JC. We have a program for mechanics, ironworker apprenticeships, painters, and an engineering program. With respect to our employment practices, we are updating our HR guide policies. When laws change and policies change or the district does things differently, we update our guide. We're tracking discipline and have plans to implement a district-wide system for tracking discipline. We conduct salary surveys regularly, and we conduct employee engagement and diversity, equity, and inclusion-focused surveys. We'll be issuing our next survey in the fall. And regarding employee development programs, we continue to offer new employees with a district guide to help them navigate the district. Orientation and EEO trainings are provided, and we have a process for performance reviews annually in October. We are training, tuition reimbursement, interview tips, and leadership academies for our employees. And then we also launched our employee resource group for women, which is called GPS. We have much interest and participation in that, and all of these things help to develop our own employees. So I know that was a lot of information. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions from board members? Questions or comments?
I just would like to say very comprehensive. Can't imagine any kind of edit or addition or subtraction. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? Secretary.
So I have a question on slide number 18. So this is our total current workforce by gender. I just want to make sure I understand what this slide, it says 660 employees.
660 is the total number of employees that we had on June 30th, 2023.
Okay, on June 30th, 2020. Okay. So I guess I'm a little concerned at the female to male ratio. It looks a little bit high. Or I guess male to female ratio looks pretty high.
We have a high male to female ratio because of the types of positions that we have here at the district. So it has been about 80-20 the whole time I've been here for the last 16 years. That's not uncommon for the district.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Thuer. Any other questions or comments? Any further discussion? Okay, there is no action required here, I believe, or is there action required?
There is.
There is action required, okay. Let's do some public comment. Is
We
there
have no
anyone in the public
speakers.
who would like to speak on the item?
Yeah, sorry about that. We have no speakers online or in the room to comment on this item.
Thank you very much for that. And at this time, I'll take a motion to accept the report. Thank you. Thank you. The item's been moved and seconded. Let's have a voice vote, please. Those in favor of accepting this report, accepting the recommendation of the report, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone against this motion? If you are, please say no. Hearing none, this item carries with the unanimous vote. Thank you. Thank you very much, Susan. Appreciate all your work. Thank you. And just for the record, we'll note that we'll be looking forward to some additional data regarding comparisons on discipline with other agencies. Thank you. All right, moving forward on the agenda, we have item number 5, which can be located on page 33 of the report, of the committee report, and that is the annual progress/status report and update on disadvantaged business enterprise program. And for that, we have Tima Davenport, who's going to lead us through that item. Good morning.
Good
Thank you.
morning. How's everyone?
Well, thank you.
Good. All right, so I'm Archimase Davenport. I'm the manager of DBE and Workforce Inclusion, and happy to be with you all this morning to give you a ton of information. So hopefully everybody's read the DBE novel that's in before you guys. A lot has happened in federal fiscal year 2022 through 2023, which is what this report covers. There's no recommendation for any action. It's just all information for you guys. There has been some changes to the rules that we will get into, but since 2014, any agencies that receive over $250,000 in planning, operating, and capital funding must have a DBE program. And so the district does have a DBE program with that small business element. And even though there's a lot of new rules, the definition of a DBE hasn't changed. So it's a for-profit business that is at least 51% owned by one or more individuals who are both socially and economically disadvantaged, or in the case of a corporation, which 51% of the stock is owned by one or more individuals who are socially and economically disadvantaged. And also whose annual gross receipts that are established by the Small Business Administration do not exceed a maximum cap of it's actually a typo, my mistake, it's 30.72 million. And as adjusted for inflation by the Secretary of USDOT. So again, the report covers, begins October 1st of 2022 through September 30th, 2023. And so we'll start with the FTA updates. So on July 21st of 2022, the Biden and Harris administration and the U.S. Department of Transportation issued a notice to propose rulemaking to modernize the DBE program and airport concessions, ACDBE program. And the intent was to get us up to the times, all right? These modifications, the last happened in 2014, so over a decade ago. And so the rule is or proposed changes would be to optimize performance, improve some operational cohesiveness, strengthening the monitoring and oversight, as well as updating some very prescriptive certification processes and provisions, and also to clarify some of the rules and regulations for recipients and for applicants and participants. So with that, the USDOT did receive a lot of comments, probably over 250 comments. The district was one among the agencies that did respond with the concern of the administrative burdens with some of the changes that would occur for those agencies that don't have a whole civil rights department, pretty much. And so we were staff was vocal about the administrative burdens as well as the definition, clarity on transit vehicle manufacturer, which now includes ferry vessels, and we'll get into a little bit of that. And so on April 9th, the USDOT did do a live stream announcing the final rule, which is some of the changes that are going to impact the district. I'm going to go over, but if you're interested, Secretary Pete Buttigieg did a wonderful job in acknowledging the importance of this program and what these changes will bring to make it more feasible for firms to enter into the program. And so with this announcement of the final rule, it will be in effect on May 9th. Only gives recipients 30 days to implement all of these changes. The most that impact the district is the reporting requirements. So now there's going to be a lot of information that needs to be collected at the time of bid. That does include race, gender, the North American Industry Classification System, or otherwise known as NAICS codes, as well as those are the additional information. The contract number and dollar amount and all of that are already on our forms, but this is going to require us to change our forms at the time of bid. This information is going to be, is expected to be received for folks that are interested in bidding on our contracts, as well as so those quotes that have been accepted and those quotes that have been rejected. So everyone that has an interest in doing business on our projects will have to submit this information with their bids or proposals. The idea behind collecting this information is going to change the uniform report. So we'll be required, we report on June 1st and December 1st. The intent is for USDOT is developing a centralized comprehensive searchable database. So this is going to be a USDOT bidders, pretty much a bidders list. Agencies will be able to establish triennial goals based off this centralized database. But again, it does require a lot of data collection. Another significant change is now FTA is going to a tiered program, which means agencies that receive over $670,000 now for capital operating and planning expenses, or excuse me, funds, they will be required to implement a full DBE program to lighten the burden. These changes were to lighten the burden for smaller agencies and will require for those tier 2, which is those that receive less than $670,000, they will not be required to establish DBE project goals. They will not be required to submit a DBE program to FTA, and they will not be required to complete the uniform report. However, they still will be required to comply with the record keeping, contract insurance, policy statement, the SBE program, and the TVM, the Transit Vehicle Manufacturer rules. Monitoring requirements for a running tally. The USDOT does recognize that you must have adequate staff in order to administer the DBE program and to oversee and monitor prompt payment. And so this means that this responsibility does not just fall on the DBE office. It does require everyone that touches the contract to be involved, and that means our resident engineers, our inspectors, our procurement team, and also project managers. The DBE office currently does have that support, so thank you, John, and to Ava and the whole procurement department and project managers, but it is very important that all hands are on deck as we monitor our contracts and make sure our DBEs are getting paid. Section D here, the prompt payment and retainage. This change just requires that the federal regulations require 30 days prompt payment within 30 days. However, 30 days is extremely too long for a small business to be paid. So FTA says that your state laws, if they are shorter timeframes, then your state law will prevail. So the district is operating off construction contractors subcontractors have to be paid within 7 days. For professional service, have to be paid within 15 days. So really no changes there for us. Section E, now the transit vehicle manufacturer. So USDOT does recognize that there is some ambiguity in the way the regs are written, and they are written for a one-size-fits-all, which it's not for especially agencies that operate ferry vessels. So in a nutshell, if your vendor is not on FTA's approved TVM list, you will not be able to award to that vendor. For us operating for the district operating ferry vessels, there are no shipyards on FTA's TVM list. So you can comply with that regulations by establishing project-specific goals. However, I'll be frank, there are 4 DBEs in the whole state of California that are certified under shipbuilding and repair code. One who is certification is on the verge of being suspended. So there's 3 DBEs that, and they are not, they don't have the capabilities of performing, building a ship from ground up, or even some of the subcontracting opportunities. So with that said, you're either, when you set a project goal, it is a lengthy process. Your goal is probably between 0 and a little bit over 1%. So with that, DOT, the US DOT does recognize that this needs some more attention. There is going to be a training session on July 30th to provide more guidance. And so now the changes allow, before you agencies, if you have to set a project goal, you would need FTA's approval before you could even advertise the solicitation. So now FTA has made it where you can request for the decision to establish a project-specific DBE goal on a vessel, ferry vessel permit. But yet you can proceed with establishing the goal and advertising the project. So that makes it a little better. In addition, counting for certain procurements, such as ferry vessel procurements, will now be able to count DBE participation. So if our vessel is being built in Washington State, any DBEs that might be certified by Washington State DOT, we would now be able to count that credit. However, that has to be approved by FTA as well. Moving on to good faith efforts on design build contracts. The regulations now require a DBE open-ended performance plan. So what this means is that, again, there's going to be a lot of monitoring. So as the prime has to provide or conduct good faith efforts into carving out subcontracting opportunities, whatever those might be, during the duration of the project. So of course, at the time that you're submitting proposal, you're not going to know, what that work will be or who your DBEs will be. But however, this allows for the prime to make good faith efforts in obtaining DBE participation. Staff will have to evaluate those good faith efforts and monitor the contract until it closes. Distributor, a new definition for distributor. Now you'll be able to count 40% for DBE firms that do drop ship goods. So the counting has not changed. It's 100% for manufactured DBEs that manufacture and have a warehouse. You can count 100% DBE participation, or for DBEs that are regular dealers, you count 60%. This distributor new definition allows now 40% for drop ship goods. And then finally, the business size standard. It currently is at 30.72 million, but this amount is going to be adjusted annually and posted on USDOT's website. So I know that was a lot just with the rule changes. Some other changes that will strengthen and modernize the DBE program is centered around certification. So now, out of 90 days to be certified, agencies have 30 days to certify firms. The interstate certification has been expedited, so now it's 10 days. Agencies have 10 days it's pretty much a reverse certification. So now a firm would only need a jurisdiction of certification from whatever agency that certified them initially. And so say Washington State DBE wants to do business in California, they would only be required to submit that form. We call it a JOC now. And then the agency has to go ahead and certify them. On the back end, I guess they'll be working to find reasons of why they should not be certified and do a decertification process. So it's kind of a reverse process. The personal net worth, it was 1.32 million. It is now up to 2.047 million. And this is a nationwide figure. They're not adjusted. There was comments to adjust, in New York, this might be a joke, but it is a national figure. And it will be looked at every 3 years. The NAICS code, business standards, now it is a gross receipts, instead of 3 years, it is now up to 5 years. There's expansion to the MAP 21, which falls on the responsibility of your state DOTs to collect this information and submit it to the administrations. And again, it's tracking gender and ethnicity. And then, of course, that expansion to the DBE directory, this will allow for DBE firms to not only list their website, but also they will be able to market their firm, putting in their capability statements and other NAICS codes of work that they can perform. That is just the changes on FTA. Is there any questions about that part?
Yeah. On page 35, what is meant in this case by personal net worth?
So the personal net worth, so in order to be into the program, your business on an annual basis, you cannot exceed the 1.32 million. Well, now it's the 2.047 million. So what also I forgot to mention is that before they would include your retirement assets and some other calculations. So if you exceeded that, you're not considered a small business, according to a DBE firm. So they took out the regulations. They exclude the retirement assets. They're excluding marital property, and so those figures won't account.
Well, then going back up, current business size is 30.72 million. How is that related, or is it to the personal net worth?
Yeah, okay. So for example, in a NAICS code, I believe, let's say, maybe it's construction. In order to be certified in a particular NAICS code, so I think construction might be at 32 or we might be at 38 million, something like that. I can't remember. But if you exceeded that, you wouldn't be able to get certified under that NAICS code.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Shall I roll on?
Please continue. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So on the FHWA side, the district is a subrecipient of the California Department of Transportation, or Caltrans, and we adhere to their local assistance procedure manual, which known as the LAPM. Caltrans' overall DBE goal for this 2022-2023 fiscal year was 22.2%. They expect to achieve that by 3.9% race neutral, which just means setting no DBE contract goals on the contract, yet obtaining that DBE participation, and then 8.3% race conscious, which means they're setting DBE goals. They plan to achieve this 18.3% by setting DBE goals on contracts. So the district is required to establish DBE contracts on projects or contracts that are FHWA assisted. For 500,000 in professional services, you do need approval for those DBE goals. Anything over 2 million for construction, you need headquarters approval. However, every goal that the district does establish does submit it to Caltrans for review. We, the district, did not award any new contracts. However, we do treat change orders as new award, especially if there's new money, so that it's considered a new award. And so with that, we awarded over 1.3 million in change order. And of that amount, 6.77% was dispersed to one sole DBE firm. Caltrans has also been busy with updating its language. They've had some audits and have had some findings that did to strengthen monitoring and enforcement and oversight. So they made changes to LAPM Chapter 9, which is the civil rights in the DBE. language, and it revises commercially useful function reviews. So that means that the primes are now going to be responsible for conducting commercially useful function to make sure that the DBE is performing work with its own forces at least 30%, as well as the district will all have to complete commercially useful functions as well. And that is just how you count credit to make, again, to make sure that there's no pass-through going on or any fraud happening to DBE goals. The termination and replacement of DBE subcontractors, there's a whole process now for how it's a little bit more clear and the process you need to follow to replace or terminate DBEs. Chapter 10, the consultant section, there's boilerplate language, pretty much adopts the language that's found in Chapter 9 into the consult section. Chapter 12, plan specifications and estimate. This revises Form FHWA 1273, which is the required contract provision for federal aid construction contracts. There's language in there specific to Davis-Bacon and related acts, local hiring preferences, labor on construction projects, and Cargo Preference Act requirements. And then finally, Chapter 16 for the administer construction contracts. This Caltrans has included forms of payment and commercially useful function forms that must be included into our solicitations. And because the DBE regulations, FHWA and FTA, they're pretty much, we wanted to be consistent, so we did adopt some of the language and some of the processes. We adopted that to applied it to our FTA contracts as well, just to stay consistent. And with that, any questions about FHA side?
Thank you
Okay.
very much. Any questions? Director Thier?
Yes, are you continuing? Because I'll save my comments for the end. Okay,
Sure.
thanks.
Okay, no problem. Okay, section C, disadvantaged enterprise project goal. The district is in the process of procuring new ferries, and we process of procuring one ferry, more to come, I believe. And with that, again, the district has to comply with section 20.49, which is transit vehicle manufacturer requirement. And so with that, again, no approved TVMs on FTA's list, so resulted in the district establishing a 1.55% DBE goal on contract 2022 F012, which is the engineering and detail design services for the construction of a new ferry build. And by resolution 2022-070, the board did approve that contract, and we did award to a small business firm, Aurora Marine Design, who was able to achieve 1.67% in DBE participation. But at the time that this report was written, that the DBE's work has not been performed yet, so there's no DBE percentages to report there. Okay, and the small business, moving on to our small business program. The district has been pretty successful in obtaining DBE participation, utilizing our DBE program. So we did award 4 contracts, and as you can see in the table here, we have a high SBE participation and some DBE participation, but again, depending on the contracts where you see there's no DBE participation. Again, like for the Suicide Deterrent System Rescue Training Net, that was awarded to a small business, unfortunately, no DBE participation. So we will continue to run a race neutral program. I know, we're all familiar that the DBE program is being challenged, affirmative action is being challenged. So the district has been operating race neutrally. So we will continue to utilize our SBE program to try to foster in that DBE participation. And then finally, let's see, we're almost there. Section E, is how we've done overall, how the diversity program for contracts, which is our DBE SVE program, how we've done as a whole. So for FTA, our goal, our overall triennial goal is 1.4%. And you might say, gosh, why is that so low? Again, you factor in the contracts that are included in the goal, and majority of them are all ferry contracts with pretty much no DB availability. And so with that, the uniform report that we did in 2022, 2023, we did award $7.2 million in contracts. And when you calculate the how you meet a goal, it's not based on what you've paid to a DBE, it's based on what has been awarded to a prime or what has been committed to a DBE. So with that, there's over 26,000 that was awarded or committed to DBEs, which is equivalent to 0.4%. And thus falling short a whole percent of the FTA goal. FHWA, again, we awarded over 1.3 million, and we did award 93,000 to a DBE, or equivalent 6.77%. District-wide, we have, this is payments paid directly to a DBE firm, which is the DBE prime row, the 2.385825. That's what the district paid directly to DBEs. The $74,000 is $971 is what has been paid to subs from the prime during that reporting period. So overall, over 2.4 million to DBEs, which then brings us to the shortfall. So as much as I don't like to be in front of you year after year sharing the same story, it is our reality. Again, there's pretty much basically three DBE firms in the entire state of California DBE directory that can work on marine contracts. Again, you look at electrical, welding, painting, a vessel, there may be over 2,000 firms certified in those areas, but they are not able to perform that specialized work on a ferry because of the insurance and bonding. In order for them to even subcontract out to a DBE, they must hold that insurance, right, to work near or on the water. And if I'm an electrical DBE, I'm not going to pay for that insurance when it's not my primary work. Does that make sense? So that's, I mean, again, it's just like, I guess another analogy or story I can say, none of us will go to the grocery store, fill our basket with a ton of groceries, knowing we have $5 in our pocket. And that's the reality, unfortunately. So with that, we have been, I can say what may be good news, hopefully this year we'll make our goal. We just awarded our construction contract for the solar panel parking lot improvement project in San Rafael. That we obtained, I believe, 6.7 or 6.9 or 6.2, over 6% in DBE participation. So we have 5 months to go. We'll see where we're at, but I think we're on track to meeting our goal for 2023, 2024. And as you can see, the district, I'm not sitting back twiddling my fingers. I'm out there doing outreach. As you can see, this is just a short list of the outreach that staff has been conducting. We did have a workshop or a webinar to address the barriers in the marine industry. We sat down with shipyards, insurance companies, marine contractors to hear their perspectives on what can be done. And honestly, if firms are not interested in this industry, they're not going to get certified. So we are hosting the district in collaboration with the California Life Certification Program is hosting a DBE, ACDBE workshop. It's a two-part. We're inviting the Federal Aviation and the Federal Highway to give an overview about the program, talk about the changes to the rule, the benefits of certification, and then we're going to follow that the next day and go to VTA. All of our certifiers in Northern California will be there. Resource partners will be there to provide hands-on assistance to try to get firms certified. So with that said, there's the outreach that we've been doing. We do have a Business Outreach Committee webpage. It's on the district website. There's recordings, there's presentations. If you want to get an insight on some of the outreach we've been doing, you can find all that material there. And with that, the district does not have to submit its shortfall analysis, but we do need to keep it on file for auditing. When FTA comes and audits, we can make that available, and they do ask and look at it, review it. And then the final thing, I will be before you probably June, no later than July, because all of the changes to the regulations will have to be updated into our DBE program. And so that needs to be approved, submitted to FTA. There is no timeline on when recipients are going to be required to submit the program. However, the rule is going to affect May 9th.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you. So we have a question or comment from Director Hill, please.
Thank you. Very, very good presentation.
Thank you.
I keep thinking about when you're talking about this, we are over the next 5, 15 years going into all new industries with electrification and changes that are occurring. And I think you're alluding to this. We have a much bigger opportunity because these are going to be very fast growing industries and things that we could get an opportunity for DBEs on. Instead of historically we've done, which is always segmented to various companies and organizations. And just strategically, work towards being a part of that.
Yeah, correct. We don't. I believe there's an industry day coming to talk about their electrification on berries, and the district has been invited. We will be participating in that to try to get our contracts that are upcoming for us advertised out there, how to get you prepped, how to get you interested in getting into the market, because if DBEs could just grasp that historically we have suffered in this area, and if you get certified and you're capable, oh my goodness, you can really do well for your business if you show the interest. But again, we're doing all that we can. We're putting our face out there. Actually Monday, procurement staff will be at a BART Small Business Summit, and I'll be in San Francisco doing another outreach. So we're out there. We're doing our job.
That's great.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Right here.
Yes, I just wanted to thank you so much for this report and so much for your work. I see you out there at all of these events and represent our district very, very well.
Thank you.
I also want to commend the district on the prompt payment. When I started my company 30 years ago, we used to leave a year to get paid because it used to take a year, and you actually had to find the person who had the invoice sitting on their desk and try to ask them nicely to please process it. So the fact that companies are now getting paid in less amount of time is actually amazing, and a credit to the district. There is an issue with DBEs not being able to perform certain types of work. Marine industry does not surprise me because the cost to get in, especially if you want to start building ships, is very, very high, and most small businesses don't have the kind of capital. We see the same thing with dredging, and I think the district is actually doing a great job in trying to look at how to increase those percentages. So again, I just really want to commend you on all of the outreach that you're doing and you have done. It's making a difference, and thank you for your work in this report.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Director Fury. Anyone else? Questions or comments?
Thank you, Tima. Yes, thank you. Absolutely.
Many thanks, and I'll just add, no one is thinking that you're sitting on your hands or twiddling your thumbs. Thank you.
You're welcome. I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
I imagine that was difficult to come forward with not having reached the 1.4.
I'm sorry?
I mean, it was difficult, excuse me, to come forward with not having met the 1.4.
Yeah, it's disappointing because it's so low and it's like, come on, really? But you have to understand, you have to understand, the factors of the reasons why.
We appreciate
Thank you.
appreciate your explanation to help us understand.
Absolutely.
And we do.
Thank you.
That concludes committee discussion on this item. Madam Secretary, is there any public comment on this item?
We have no public comment on this item. We have no one in the line, and we have no one in the room.
Okay. Is there any public comment on any other item coming before this committee?
No, we have no public comment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I just want to say a couple of comments. I went here kind of like bouncing up in my chair because this meeting was all about fairness and it was all about opportunity. And we have such fantastic staff that is making sure that not only we are in compliance with whatever the local or state or federal government is requiring us to do, that, by the way, is linked to the money that we get in most cases to be able to do what we need to do in terms of maintenance and other projects. These employees are absolutely key to these women, that Ms. Davenport, Ms. Spencer, and of course, Topper, all key to being able to access that money to do the things that we need to do. The amount of data, the amount of programs and policy, the amount of updates, the amount of research, all of the things that these women do is, I'm amazed by it. But again, it helps us to reach our goals and our responsibility in terms of fairness, not only to contractors, not only to our employees in terms of opportunity, but it also is our responsibility. And these women help us to do that. So thank you very much. One last thing I wanted to say is I wanted to say thank you to the employees who have waited so long for us to make these appropriate adjustments as to their compensation. I want to thank the committee for all of their thoughtful discussion on this. I feel regretful. I feel like I feel a little bit like I fumbled a little bit, but I think with the work of this committee and with the intentions of our staff, we're getting to the right place, and we're going to continue to work on it, make sure that our employees are fairly compensated for work that they do.
You're doing a great job.
Well said. So, and with that, with the business of this committee being concluded, I would like to ask for a motion to adjourn. So, thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Everyone in favor of adjourning? Yes. Is there anyone opposed? Say no. All right. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.